Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It's alive! It's
Hello and welcome to It's Alive Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they're ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the outlaw Dr. H.R. Smokenstein, THC, and with me as always is my very own Scream Queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride of Smokenstein, the India heart expert, the guts and gore, the gorgeous, sexy Amy Rose. And we're here at part 3 of Norman and Norma Bates, and I'm really sad.
To let them go?
I am. I'm genuine. I'm going to miss this story.
I think we've had them for a good 3 weeks now.
I wish I'd made it 4 weeks. Because there's a lot jam-packed into today. You think the last 2 parts were crazy enough? There is so much crazy in this episode that it outdoes the last 2 episodes. This is batshit from start to finish. Yeah. But I am going to miss all Master Bates.
But you only said that so you could say
I know. But I see I'm wearing today, that's why I'm wearing my hockey jersey today. If you're watching the video, you can see I'm wearing my Mama's Boy hockey jersey. Because I mean, there's only one person in the world that's a bigger Mama's Boy than Norman Bates, and that's Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
The Camp Crystal Lake killer.
Yep.
And we'll talk about him someday. Not right now, but someday. But yeah, that's why I'm wearing my jersey today, my hockey jersey today.
Good idea.
Yeah, Mama's Boy. But yeah, I'm kind of sorry I didn't split this one into 2 as well, because it's such a fucking fun story and it's so crazy. And but I don't know. I suppose, like you said, there's only. Would I just be really fucking tearing the arse out of it just because I want to tear the arse out of it, because I want to be in this? Yeah. I love this story.
It is a good story.
It's my favorite. Anyway, last time we left on Norman, he was incarcerated, thrown into jail, or not into jail, into a mental institution. Yep. Well, technically, last thing we said last episode was he was there for 20 years.
It's basically jail.
And then not there anymore. Mm-hmm. So let's get into how he fared out after rehabilitation.
Well, when Norman Bates was declared legally insane in 1960, most people assumed that was the end of his story. He lived out his days locked away in a psychiatric hospital, while Bates Motel and the old house on the hill rotted quietly into history. But they were wrong, because after 22 years of treatment, doctors determined that Norman Bates was no longer a danger to society. In 1982, at the age of 50, he was released back into the world.
And I can just picture the townsfolk of Fairville just spitting out their coffee at the breakfast table reading the headline, Norman Bates released.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened. The public reaction was explosive.
You should have been there for the welcome home party.
Many people remember the case vividly. The shower murder of Marion Crane, the missing investigator Milton Arbogast, the swamp filled with cars, and the shocking revelation that Norman had lived with his mother's mummified corpse.
For them, the idea of Norman Bates walking free was unthinkable. For anybody, the idea of somebody walking free after that is unthinkable.
Absolutely. And the loudest voice of opposition came from Leila Loomis, Marion Crane's sister. For 2 decades, Leila had lived with the grief of her sister's murder. She had remarried to Sam Loomis, Marion's old lover, but tragedy seemed to follow her family like a curse.
Do you think that was a grief thing? Do you think they hooked up because, you know, they both loved Marion? And
not just a grief thing. There's loads of like famous couples that are there because one of them went out with the other siblings. Jackie Onassis, when she married, was it Aristotle Onassis? When she married him, he had been her sister's former lover.
I don't know who any of those people are.
Jackie O was JFK's wife.
Oh.
Yep. When Norman's release was announced, Leila began organising...
Leila.
It's Leila.
It's Lila Crane.
Is it Lila Crane?
Yes.
I always thought it was
You
Leela.
said that last week too. I was like, it's Lila.
Leela.
And then I thought you corrected yourself after you kept hearing me say Lila.
Sorry, I'll call her Lila.
Leela
I always
is
thought it was Leela.
Leela.
Well, yeah, but I could also call my child Lila and call her Leela. Nobody would blink an eyelid. Leela.
Yeah,
Leela.
just be like, she doesn't know the fuck.
She gathered signatures for petitions, stood on courthouse steps with placards, and gave interviews warning that Norman Bates was still dangerous.
And you can't really blame her. I mean, if a guy killed my sister, spied on women, and had his mother's body in a rocking chair, and he was going to get out of the hospital, I'd be at the head of the fucking protest committee too, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Down with this sort of thing.
Lila Loomis wasn't alone. Better? Okay. Many townsfolk signed her petition and the press ate
Say
it
that
up.
to me like I'm the one that named her. Like it was me who was like, oh yeah, we're going to spell it L-I-L-A.
You're the one that corrected me. Just making sure that
But
I
that's
said
her
it right.
fucking name, man. We've knew this 3 weeks. You can't remember whole Lila Loomis's name.
Lila.
Even though
I
she
think
was only
Leela
really a part
sounds
of
nicer.
last week's. Huh?
I think Leela is nicer than Lila. I don't know, that's just me.
Take it up
Headlines,
with Lila Loomis.
Headlines described the looming release of Norman Bates as a nightmare returning to Fairville. The doctors, although they held firm, Norman had responded well to treatment, they argued, and he was stable, medicated, and no longer under the grip of mother.
And so the doors open, the Norman Bates walk free. But that's kind of like, that's why you have criminals jump for the insanity defense.
Kind of an
You know,
easy way.
that's why their first go-to is insanity,
But
because
sometimes you can be retried after you get better in hospital. Yeah, like
Ted Gein.
Ed Gein, exactly. Yeah. So they see that there's
But
there
again,
you
he
get
was
better. Like
legally insane. But
if
then,
you're insane at the time of the
that's
crimes,
it. You got to prove that
Mm.
you were insane when the crime happened and not that
Yeah.
you were insane afterwards or whatever. But that's why they try and get that, even though it can be a double-edged sword, because you could get, we'll just say, for instance, here in Ireland, you get a murder charge. You're 20 years is usually kind of the sentence.
Yeah, you
right?
can
That's a life
spend
sentence.
longer, but you can apply for
And it will
parole
be
after
about
that.
15 years before you get out.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas when you're deemed legally insane and put into an insane asylum, it's undetermined how long you're going to stay there.
Unless
so
you
could
apply
get out.
for on the grounds of temporary insanity. So if that's your defense, then
Might
you're
help,
kind of
yeah. But when it's an insanity plea, it's a case of, well, you could be there for 5 years or you might never leave here.
Exactly.
So
You're taking a chance.
You don't really know. You're just taking a chance. You're probably safer in this area as well than you will be in a regular jail. I don't know, but this is the kind of other side of it. If you are insane, as I believe Norman Bates was, and you get medicated and you get better, they will release you.
Yeah. At first, Norman tried to live quietly. He took a job at a small diner in town, working in the kitchen under the supervision of a friendly waitress named Mary Samuels.
See, he had to take that job though,
Because
he
you
would have
can't,
happily just went back to the motel. But it was, work really. So they want to see that you're
Make it an effort.
able to live a regular
Yeah.
life. I mean, they do that with regular criminals
do.
as well.
Yeah.
You get out, and part of your parole is you need to get a fucking job, you need to get an address,
You need
and
to
you
stay
need to stay
clean.
the fuck away from all the people that you used to hang out with.
Exactly. Mary was kind to him. She treated him with patience and never mocked his nervous stammer or strange mannerisms. For Norman, who had spent decades in an institution, her companionship felt like a lifeline.
All right. Here's where it gets fucking messy.
Okay.
And this is why I'm saying this week's episode is crazier than the other two put together. Mary, what did we say her second name was? Samuels. Who else used the name Samuels? Can you remember in this tale?
Sam Loomis.
When Marion Crane signed in,
Oh, Samuels.
she signed as Samuels to keep
She
her
did.
name hidden, and that is the same thing that's going on here. Mary is trying to hide her surname. But Mary is Mary Loomis, daughter of Sam and Lila Loomis.
Okay. And that connection made everything more complicated. On the surface, Mary seemed genuinely supportive of Norman, encouraging his attempt to reintegrate into society. But behind the scenes, she was entangled in her mother's mission to prove Norman was still dangerous.
So to recap, Norman's working at a diner, trying to live a quiet life, trying to be a good guy. Meanwhile, Marion's sister is out from protesting, and Marion's niece is buttering his toast at the back. And it's like a generational grudge disguised as a lunch shift. It's vendetta!
Why wouldn't it be? Do you know? One of the strangest developments came almost immediately after Norman's release. A woman approached him at the diner, a frail older woman named Emma Spool.
She's back!
She claimed to be Norman's real mother. She told him that Norma Bates had not been his biological parent, but rather his aunt. According to Spool, she had been institutionalized years ago after murdering Norman's father. When she was taken away, Norma had stepped in to raise him.
Do you think that would fuck Norman up a little bit? Well, I don't know. Yeah.
He didn't know.
Obviously, this would fuck Norman up a little bit. No, finding this out.
Oh, yeah, we'll find it out.
Do you know that the person who controlled him into doing all these murders wasn't even his real fucking mother?
The person he devoted his life to.
They, you know, he's been dressing up as his aunt all these years instead of his mom.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, we know from last week, or from the first week, part 1, Emma Spool isn't his fucking mother. She's just a fucking lunatic. Like,
yeah.
You know? And we'll get into that. Norman will find out eventually, and we'll find out how he finds out. But it's almost like this guy has no hope from the start. He's fighting uphill. Norman has rehabilitated. If left alone, Norman would have lived out the rest of his life a quiet fucking man, doing his shit and getting on with things. But between Lila Loomis, Mary Loomis, and Emma fucking Spool, this guy, no luck with women around him.
Like,
his family suck.
Well,
that's I suppose the Loomises aren't his family, but their family are fucking pretty hardcore too. But again, I understand because I do what they do as well. Because you'd have to assume Lila wouldn't know or wouldn't have made the effort to see how Norman's psychology had went. Enough to be like sympathetic towards him. Because why would you? If it's your family member, you're not going to be sympathetic.
No.
Fuck him,
No.
So. Yeah, this guy's in trouble.
So Norman was confused and torn between his long history with Norma and this new claim from Emma Spool. Whether or not her story was true, it planted a dangerous seed of doubt in his fragile mind.
And meanwhile, then, the Bates Motel itself was in disarray. In Norman's absence, it had fallen under the control of Warren Toomey. So he had been hired to just manage the place while Norman was away to keep it running. And he was a bit of a sleazy operator who used the property as a base for drug deals and prostitution. You know, one of these places you can pay for by the hour rather by the night.
When Norman returned to Fairville, he was horrified by what happened to what had become of his family business. He fired Toomey on the spot and he tried to restore the motel's reputation.
Which is fucking funny in a twisted kind of way. Norman Bates, the guy who literally dumped bodies in the swamp, suddenly clutching his fucking handbag, and he's like, someone's turned my motel into a halfway house for junkies.
Yep.
My family name. You're ruining the good name of Bates.
Toomey didn't take it well. He taunted Norman, mocking his past and hinting that everyone knew what he'd done. Soon after, Toomey disappeared, and his body was later found stuffed in a trunk with stab wounds eerily reminiscent of Norman's old mother murders.
Just like that, Fairvale's, I keep calling it Fairvale.
I keep doing it as well.
Fairvale's worst fears come true. Norman Bates was out, and people are dying again.
To the outside world, it looked exactly like a relapse. A killer released too soon, falling back into his old ways, but those close to Norman began to suspect something else. Strange phone calls, notes signed mother, and a deliberate manipulations seemed designed to push Norman back toward the madness.
Yeah. So someone was gaslighting the gaslighter.
Exactly.
But there was one situation where he was talking about where because when you're working in a diner and you see in all those old shows and stuff like that, the waitress will come over and clip on the fucking order and then the cook will just spin it around, grab his order and go make it. And Norman pulled down one of the orders one day to bring to the cook, and it was a note from mother.
Oh,
so you gotta. I mean, that's some serious fucking messing with him, you know.
Yeah. And whether it was Lila, Mary, or Emma Spool pulling the strings, the result was the same. Norman Bates was once again standing at the edge of the abyss.
So far, Norman Bates' second chapter was shaping up just like the first. A fragile man, haunted by his past, taunted by voices, and now surrounded by women with hidden motives. And soon the bodies would begin to pile up again.
Yeah.
The Bates Motel may have reopened its doors, but what it really did was reopen fucking hell.
Yeah. And after Warren Toomey's grisly end, whispers started running through Fairvale again. The Bates Motel was back in Norman's hands, but it wasn't exactly welcoming weary travellers. Instead, it was becoming a magnet for strange occurrences, unexplained screams, and missing people. And Norman, well, he was already starting to unravel.
Which, to be fair, is kind of what everyone predicted. I mean, if you bet against Norman Bates will hear voices again, you lost money. But I mean, like I already said, he was doomed from the get-go because everyone was out to get him.
Yeah.
The only way Norman would have been okay in this situation is if he had relocated.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
he could, going back to Fairvale was the stupidest fucking thing that could have been done.
Definitely.
Putting him back into the motel and the home surroundings was a dumb idea to begin with. Like, you know,
Well, historically, and going from my experience as well, murderers and offenders are rehoused in the most ridiculous places. Larry Murphy was housed across the road from my secondary school gates.
and that was because the village he lived in said, we will not have him back.
So they're like, cool, put him across from that secondary school girls' school there. No problem. Perfect. He was gone within a few weeks. But come on, like.
Just make sure that we don't go on any school field trips to the Wicklow Mountains or anything like that.
It's funny. I was only reminded of again this week. I was at home and my mom walked down a lane to get to this Chinese and she was like, oh yeah, Larry Murphy used to live here, sure. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, every time you say it.
And if you're interested in knowing who Larry Murphy is, go on to the Horrorverse Network on Patreon. It's there somewhere. We've definitely talked about him a few times. We've done a full episode on his crimes once, definitely. It might be in the Real Monsters kind of archives, but they're still there on Patreon. Or I think we might have done a special as well on the Horrorverse headlines at some stage. It's there. Just go into the search bar, type in Larry Murphy, the Beast of Bolton Glass.
Yep.
And yeah.
Have a listen. Anyway, back to Norman. Norman tried to focus on the ordinary, running the diner shift with Mary, cleaning the motel rooms, and even repainting signs. But Mother had crept back in. Notes appeared, written in a familiar, sharp hand. Calls came late at night, the voice on the other end scolding him, commanding him.
See, Norman told Mary he was frightened that his mother had returned. So he was confiding in her. He got really close to Mary and he was confiding in her. And Mary tried to soothe him, insisting that he was imagining it. But each time Norman looks less certain. And it's kind of something that we're going to learn about Mary is that Mary's kind of almost like an unwilling pawn in this whole fucking story, you know?
Yeah. One of the earliest incidents that really shook Norman involved the old attic of the house. A teenage couple, daring each other on a local thrill seekers game, had broken into the Bates property.
And we would have all done it. You know, we would have all done it. Especially this time of fucking year. It would have been like, I dare you to go into the old Bates house.
They crept through the darkened halls, giggling until they reached the attic. There, in the shadows, they came across what they claimed was the old figure of an old woman sitting silently in a chair.
Classic teen horror movie shit. Let's break into the murder house and see what we find. Spoiler, it's fucking trauma.
Exactly. The boy went to investigate, calling out, but as he leaned closer, the figure lunged at him with a knife. The two screamed and bolted from the house, barely escaping with their lives.
Now, I wonder, was that the Loomises trying to make it, because they didn't get killed, was that the Loomises trying to get the story running? That Norman is in there.
Or had Norman slipped back out of it.
Or had Norman, slipped at that point and just barely held himself fucking back. Like, you know, it's because of him being, because again, I don't blame Norman for any of this.
No. Well,
none of it.
Norman was horrified by this. And he insisted to Mary that he hadn't been in the attic, that he hadn't attacked anyone. But then he discovered a missing knife from the drawer kitchen. Well, he didn't discover the missing knife. He discovered that the knife was missing.
Yeah. Open the drawer. Oh shit, where's my butcher knife?
Exactly. And once again, that made him question his own sanity. Was Mother alive? Was she controlling him? Or was someone else in the house?
But I mean, this is a cruel cycle.
Yeah.
I mean, Norman doesn't need much to spiral as it is.
No.
Just one missing knife, one spooky story, and suddenly he's doubting his entire grip on reality. And you know, you'd be the same way if you were like, I know I had that fucking knife. And if you're someone who's recovering who knows now, who's stable-minded and knows I have the, like when you look at the first two parts, when we were talking about it, as a teenager, he's slipping into it, so he's not realizing it. By the time we get to part 2 with his story and the whole Marion Crane thing, he is completely fucking unaware that Mother and him are different people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or the same person. Sorry. He sees them as two different people. So at this point now, he's after getting the medication. He's after going through the treatment. So he is aware that this has happened to him and that this could happen to him again. And that his brain, as Norman, will not acknowledge what happens when he is Mother. So if the knife is missing, it's like, oh, fuck.
Exactly, yeah. And his paranoia only deepened when he went into the basement. The basement of the Bates house had always been the most ominous place. It was dark, damp, and cluttered with the remnants of decades of family life. And it was also the room where Norma Bates's preserved corpse had once been discovered.
But he used to hide her down there any time people came to the house.
Nobody wants to go into a fucking basement, like, so you wouldn't see her.
Well, it was the safest place to hide her.
Exactly.
The fruit cellar is what he used to call it.
Fruit cellar, posh.
But yeah, he that's where he used to put her when there was people at the house that he didn't want knowing.
I suppose the best place to keep the smell out as well, no?
I suppose so, yeah.
So
What's that smell? Oh, that's the fruit cellar. I make my own
beer.
Yeah, I'm making my own fucking
It's
cider.
all fermenting down there.
Apples.
Yeah. I learned how to make cider over the weekend.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's get drunk.
One night, Norman went down to check on a strange noise. In the dim light, he saw the outline of a figure sitting in his mother's old chair, and his heart raced. He called out, "Mother?" But when he approached, the chair was empty.
That's the kind of thing that will make anyone lose it. Let alone the guy already convinced his dead mom is was running the show.
Yeah.
I mean, now he thinks he's seeing her again. It's got to be. I've always thought that kind of insanity, that kind of mental health issue, has to be terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Did I see this? Didn't I see this? Did this happen?
Sure
Did it happen?
What you see, not being sure of what
Is my
you
mom
hear.
dead or alive?
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Is that voice real? Is that voice fake? I think, again, the best description of it was in the Ed Gein Monster Show. When the doctor's explaining his psychosis to him, it's like, well, if I make a mistake, Ed, I'll turn around and I'll be like, well, shit, shouldn't have done that. Whereas you will literally see someone across the road screaming at you going, "You shouldn't have done that, you fucking idiot." And he's like, it's like your mind is glass and it's shattered and everything's reflecting back at you and you can't tell which is reality, which is fantasy, which is a dream, which is...
But I had an experience like that. I don't have mental health issues, but I suppose I was about 9 or 10 and I was after reading a Jacqueline Wilson book called The Illustrated Mom. And the mom, she kind of has like a mental break and she goes into hospital. And I had read that before bed, and then I woke up. I went into my mom's room, and obviously my mom and dad were like up in the kitchen with the door closed, like we do at night, watching their TV. And mom wasn't there, and I sat in her bed and I cried my little heart out, and I was like, I want my mom back. I was like, I just want my mom back. I just want my mom back. And next thing I heard her laughing in the kitchen, I was like, weird. And I just got back into bed. But imagine that happening to you constantly. It was terrifying enough at
like
that
being
time.
half dreaming, half awake
So,
all the time.
Yeah. And for Norman, it was more proof that he was losing his grip, or worse, that his mother was truly back. Mary Loomis took on more and more of the role of a caretaker. She cooked for Norman, listened to his fears, and reassured him that he wasn't losing his mind.
Just for a bit of context here, because we didn't actually mention this.
Oh.
So when Mary meets Norman first at the job at the diner, she kind of lets it slip to him that she has nowhere to stay at the moment, that she's after splitting up with her boyfriend, he's cheating on her, and no, she's nowhere to stay. So Norman, being Norman, says, well, I got a motel. I got fucking rooms to burn. Come stay one.
Yeah.
And she takes him up in the offer and he's like, look, come on up to the house and you can have dinner and all this stuff. Like he did with Marion, which would make me nervous too.
Yeah.
But that's why she ends up being there, or how she ends up making her way in there. Obviously, Lila is the one behind her, and get yourself into that fucking house, so we can start playing them up. But like I said earlier, whereas Lila didn't take the time to, and like any family member who's had a family member murdered, they're not going to give a shit about the killer. No. She didn't take time to look at how his mental health was a factor in the whole fucking Marion Crane murder. Mary is now in this position where she is living with Norman. She's in the house with Norman.
Mm-hmm.
She's staying with him until she can find a place of her own.
Yeah.
So she is seeing the real Norman Bates.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, Mary's just a bit more softer and a bit more able to relate to him and understand how we got to where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But Mary's position was complicated. She was still under pressure from her mother, Lila Loomis, to prove Norman was still dangerous. And Lila's plan was to torment Norman, to push him back into a psychotic break and then expose him. Mary was caught in the middle, torn between her loyalty to her mother and her growing sympathy for Norman.
So she's basically running a double life here. Part caregiver, part saboteur. Imagine cooking someone dinner while also hiding knives to make him think they're going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was psychological warfare and Norman was the battlefield.
Yeah. And then enter Dr. Raymond. He was Norman's psychiatrist from the institution.
Mm-hmm.
He was still monitoring Norman's condition, kind of like a parole officer. He'd visit periodically to ensure his patient was coping with life outside.
Yeah.
His job was going okay for him. His interactions with people were going okay with him. He was okay in the home. He wasn't seeing or hearing mother anymore. All this kind of shit.
Well, at first, Raymond was cautiously optimistic. Norman seemed calmer, more lucid than expected. But as the incidents piled up, the phone calls, the missing knives, the stories about mother, Raymond began to worry.
Obviously. In his notes, Raymond wrote, patient demonstrates signs of relapse, experiences auditory hallucinations in mother's voice, displays paranoia, hypervigilance, and confusion regarding reality. Continued supervision is necessary. Translation, yep, it's happening again. Somebody get the butterfly nets ready.
Yeah. Raymond urged Norman to trust him and to ignore the voices and focus on his recovery. But Norman was slipping, and Mary's conflicted behaviour only pulled him deeper into doubt. By now, Norman was trapped in a vicious triangle. Emma Spool claiming to be his real mother, Lila and Mary working to destabilise him, and his own fractured psyche resurrecting mother from within.
So the stage was set for a fucking violent escalation here.
Yep.
And when it did, the deaths would once again shock Fairvale.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing says welcome back to society like another round of knife murders at the Bates Motel.
Absolutely. The pressure around Norman Bates was reaching a breaking point. He was caught between his supposed, as we said, new mother, Emma Spool, the manipulations of Lila and Mary. Lila. God, I'm going to rechristen her myself, and his own psyche. And like so many times before, the walls finally collapsed in blood. Next time you fuck up in a word, I'm going to shout at you as well. Can't wait for it. I'm waiting for it.
I'm going to pause everything and phonetically write down, change every Lila to L-I-E-L-A. So you can see Lila.
I know the words that you fuck up on, so someday I'll surprise you. I'll have gone through everything.
Anyway, so what did you last say, that the walls finally collapsed in blood? Of course they did. I mean, it's Norman Bates. The question isn't if someone is going to die, it's when and who.
Lila Loomis had been relentless in her campaign to prove Norman was still a killer. Together with her daughter Mary, she orchestrated pranks designed to drive Norman mad. Phone calls in his mother's voice, notes signed mother, and shadows glimpsed in the attic.
Well, the goal was simple. Push Norman back into a psychotic break, then expose him, and, before he killed you. Like, Lila wasn't expecting him to go out and kill him. Yeah. Her goal was to get enough stories rolling that it would be like, maybe we released him too soon, bring him back in. Yeah. It was just to get him crazy enough to be running around in a dress and a wig again,
exactly.
Basically.
But the plan went horribly wrong. One night, Lila crept into the Bates property, dressed as mother to terrify Norman further. She slipped into the cellar, hiding in the shadows, waiting for him to find her. But Norman wasn't the one who found her. A figure descended into the basement. A knife flashed in the darkness, and before Lila could scream, the blade struck her. Her body collapsed beside the same old fruit cellar where Norma Bates' corpse had once been discovered.
And just like that, Marion's sister, who had spent 20 years protesting, warning and fighting, becomes another victim in the Bates house. Irony at its cruelest.
Yes. The woman who had sworn to stop Norman Bates forever was silenced in the very place she feared most. Mary was devastated. She hadn't wanted her mother dead. She'd only wanted to protect Norman by helping prove his fragility. But when Lila never came home, Mary knew something terrible had happened. Norman, meanwhile, grew more and more unmoored. He swore to Mary that Mother had returned, not Emma Spool, not his imagination, but Norma herself. He insisted that his mother was alive in the house again, moving through the shadows and killing anyone who threatened to separate them.
And here we go again, Norman's greatest hits album. She's alive! She's dead! She's in the basement! She's in my head!
Put it to a Bee Gees song.
She's alive! She's alive!
Dr. Raymond sensed that things were spiraling out of control. He confronted Mary, accusing her and Lila of deliberately tormenting Norman. Mary, cornered, admitted the truth, that the phone calls and notes had been part of their scheme. But she insisted that Norman himself had not killed anyone since his release.
But Raymond disagreed, and this is where I'm kind of confused as to why he, as a doctor, hadn't jumped in a little earlier and said, all right, Norman, maybe we just bring you back to the hospital for a little while.
Yeah.
Tweak your thing. But he believed Norman was still a danger. So, I mean, that his fractured psyche was too unstable to be trusted. Why would you leave him where he is? Like, you know, I mean, as a doctor, you should be taking this guy and
moving him.
Just bring him back
for
the time being, or put him in a halfway fucking house style kind of thing for the time being of Norman, come home here every night and we can keep an eye on you and ease you back into society rather than being like, here you go, boom, welcome back to the motel.
Yeah.
Let's hope nothing bad happens.
That night, Mary made a fateful choice. Hoping to protect Norman, she dressed in Norma Bates' old clothing and wig, taking on the role of a mother. Her goal was to convince Norman that his mother was just a ghost, an illusion that she could dispel.
But see, this is the thing, right? Because what happened there was, and I've read about this situation, Norman was answered the phone. The phone rang. Norman answered the phone.
Yeah.
At this point, Mary doesn't know that Lila's dead. So Mary thinks Lila's on the fucking phone. Chances are it might have been Emma.
Okay.
But Norman starts talking to Mother on the phone and saying that he doesn't want to kill her. She's too nice. She's trying to help him. I won't kill her, Mother. I won't kill her. So Mary did this out of desperation as well. She obviously knew where the costume was fucking hidden because they had the costume hidden.
Yeah,
like, you know, in the cellar. It was underneath a little. There was a loose piece of tile, and they'd hide the costume, the wig, and the dress under the tile.
Okay.
And she put that on, and she tried kind of acting as Mother first.
Yeah.
To try and convince him to stop. Basically, it was like, Norman, I'm your mother. Stop doing this. Stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing. And he was blanking her basically to the point where he started coming at her, and she started stabbing at Norman to protect herself at the time.
Okay.
But when Norman saw her in the outfit, like his face was just twisted and hard. Mother was real again. Standing and her standing before him in flesh and blood meant nothing to him. It was like, Mother's speaking to me. I know you're not really Mother, you know?
Yeah. Mary tried to reassure him, pulling off the disguise to show it was only her, but Norman couldn't process the truth. He believed Mother had possessed Mary and that both were conspiring against him.
That's the danger of playing dress up in the Norman Bates house. This is why they don't have fancy dress parties at the Bates house. You don't get a cute photo shoot, you get fucking stabbed.
Yep. And Dr. Raymond arrived just in time to witness the chaos. He found Norman trembling, Mary in the mother outfit, and the situation on a knife's edge. Raymond tried to intervene, but Norman, panicked, confused, and lost to his delusion, struck out. In the struggle, Raymond was killed. Mary screamed, realizing the nightmare was complete and Norman had killed again.
See, I'm trying to remember how I read this. I believe that he might have, it might have been very reminiscent of Arbogast's murder.
Okay.
Where it was at the top of the stairs and he kind of slashed at him, and whatever way he fell then from the stairs,
his head, like.
he ended up fucking dying. I can't really remember. But at this point, Raymond was smart enough to have contacted the police, and the police ran away. You know?
Yeah. They burst into the house, guns drawn, finding Mary in Norma's wig and dress and a knife in her hand. Norman stood by, whimpering, muttering about Mother.
And fucking with a couple of knife wounds on his fucking hands from being stabbed.
Christ.
So now it looks like Mary is trying to kill him.
Absolutely. The officers shouted warnings, and Mary tried to explain to them that she wasn't the killer, but in the confusion, the police opened fire. Mary collapsed, shot dead in the very house she tried to save Norman from.
And in the cruelest twist yet, the daughter who had pitied Norman, who believed he could recover, ends up being mistaken for Mother and killed by the cops.
Yes.
So that's fucking mental. Like,
absolutely.
And Norman at this point, free and clear.
Yep.
This was all the Loomis's issue,
Exactly.
not his, do you know?
Yeah. And for Vervale, the tragedy seemed endless. First Marion, then Sam, then Lila, and now Mary. The Crane Loomis family tree had been cut down branch by branch, all because of Norman Bates. And in the aftermath, Norman seemed eerily calm. He told police he was innocent, that Mother had done everything. The detectives, convinced Mary had been the true culprit, believed him, at least temporarily.
And that's the thing, like, they believed that Mary and Lila fell out and that Mary murdered Lila. Mary murdered Raymond because he figured out what was fucking going on, and that she was going to get her final revenge on Norman for everything by killing him. But she was dead. She couldn't defend herself at this fucking point. Yeah. It was gone. And then you think, no, Norman can go away and live a normal life, even though he's just now murdered another 4 people at least, because we have Toomey at the start, that he definitely... I mean, nobody else would have murdered Toomey bar.
Oh,
Norman.
No, nobody.
Which kind of then begs the question, was he crazy from day one? Or did Emma Spool kill fucking Toomey for him?
Could have been Emma.
Because that's when Emma Spool returned. Once everybody thought Norman was still innocent and it was all the Loomis's problem, in comes Emma to fucking stir that pot a little more. At least she thought she was going to stir that pot a little fucking more.
And she came to Norman at the motel, cradling him like a child. She confessed the truth, that she was really his mother, and Norma had only raised him because Emma had been locked away. Then she told him the reason she'd been committed in the first place, because she killed Norman's father.
So this is the family reunion from hell. Norman's real mom shows up, admits she's killed his dad, and expects a hug. And just so we can explain this a little bit as well, again, because at the start we kind of said she approached... It's not that she approached him and told him that she was his real mother at the beginning of this whole Loomis affair. What happened was she worked in the diner with Norman, and it's suspected that she was playing, while Lila was pretending to be Norma, that at the same time Emma was contacting Norman by notes and by fucking phone, claiming to be Mother.
Okay.
So, you know, he had 2 different women fucking screaming, "I'm your mother" at you.
Yeah.
This is just where she comes and says, "I am Emma Spoon.
Yes.
I am the woman that, you know, that you believe to be right. I am actually your fucking mother." And, you know.
Yeah. And for Norman, it was the final fractured. He listened as Emma pleaded with him to accept her, but then something shifted.
What the fuck is shifting?
I don't know. Shifted slowly. Shifted. His face hardened and his voice dropped into the shrill, scolding tone of Mother. Norman picked up a shovel and struck Emma Spool dead. Shovel deaths freak me the fuck out. Don't like them. I don't care if it's the back of the shovel. It's when it's the...
No, the back of the shovel freaks me out. And I'll tell you
noise.
why. No, I'll tell you exactly why. I didn't realize, as a child, that getting whacked in the head like that could kill somebody.
Oh, no.
And no, it's not a thing. Okay. What was the name of that fucking stupid soap opera? Glenroe.
Yeah.
Glenroe was this old, like, farm soap opera. It was, for English people, it was like Irish Emmerdale. Yeah. Is the best way to describe it. For us,
we knew it was school time.
Yeah. You heard that. It was like, oh, balls, it's bedtime and I got to get up for school tomorrow. Because it was a Sunday show. And I remember there was this one scene in it. And I can't remember, was it the Traveller character that was called, I think his name was Blackie or something like that was his nickname. And there was another guy and he smacks him in the back of the head. They get into an argument on the farmyard and he hits him with the fucking shovel. It's stuck in my head. Hits him with the shovel in the back of the head and it kills him. And I remember turning to my mom and we were like, "That can kill you?" And she was like, "Yep." I was like, "Holy shit." But obviously because Norman had done the exact same thing. I had the same
experience with Glenroe, except it wasn't that. It was a plant dying because they watered it too much. And I looked at my mom and I was like, "You can do that to a plant?"
So like Norma before her, Emma Spool was preserved, her body hidden inside the Bates house, and Norman whispered to her in the dark, telling her she was home now, telling her she would never leave him again. So she is the new Norma to him. You know, she's taking the place of Mother.
Yeah. And with that, the Bates Motel reopened its doors under the watchful eye of Mother once more.
Yeah. So to recap, he got out of the hospital, got manipulated, got confused, and ended up adding yet another corpse to his mom collection. Back to square one.
Exactly.
We are literally back to where we were at part 2, right at the beginning again.
Exactly. So far, Norman Bates had survived prison, survived protests, survived plots against him, And yet, in the end, he always came back to the same place. The house, the motel, the voice of mother. But this wasn't the end of his story, because soon a new woman would check into the motel, Maureen Coyle. And with her arrival, Norman's tale would spiral into an even darker tragedy. Her name is very like Marion Crane's name.
Isn't it?
Maureen Coyle, Marion Crane.
But I think that was part of this as well from a book I read. It was when he saw her luggage.
MC.
It was, the anagram on it was MC, and it was, because this was maybe a short few years since the whole Loomis issue.
Okay.
Hang on, just let me check. It was... So what did we say the thing was? It was 22 years, so it was 82 when the whole Loomis thing happened, and I believe I should have wrote this down. It was 86, so this would have been 4 years later.
Okay. Well, by the mid-1980s, Norman Bates was once again living under the roof of the old Gothic house, with the Bates Motel flickering vacancy in the night. He'd killed Emma Spool, tucked her away as though she were simply another relic of his broken family, and returned to life as if it were business as usual. But the past wasn't finished with him yet, because a new guest was about to check in, as we said.
Yeah. And if we've learned anything by now, it's that checking into the Bates Motel is basically signing your own obituary.
Yes.
Even though he had been good for 4 years, he had behaved himself,
Yeah. So Maureen Coyle was a fragile woman in her 20s, and she had recently been released from a psychiatric hospital. Tormented by guilt and shame, she carried the scars of her own troubled past.
I forgot to put in that part. Maureen Coyle had been in a convent, preparing to be a nun. Lost faith and had climbed, the bell towers they have in some of these churches. She had climbed to the top of one of these bell towers with the intention of committing suicide.
But she didn't.
Another nun had ran up and stopped her in time. That other nun lost her footing, fell, and died.
Christ.
So obviously Maureen left the church, but she was obviously rattled with guilt because it was her fault that this other woman had died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Maureen arrived at the Bates Motel late one evening, exhausted and hopeless. Norman welcomed her politely, giving her a room, but as she closed the door behind her, Maureen fell into despair, and that night she attempted again to take her own life.
So here's this setup. Norman, the man who murdered women, suddenly finds one in danger, but not from him. She's already trying to end her own life. So, I mean, it's a weird situation. And I believe, I can't be certain on this, I believe he checked her into the same room as Marion Crane.
Well, that's not a good start. So for Norman discovered her unconscious and the pills scattered beside her. And in a strange twist of fate, instead of killing her, he saved her. He carried her into the bathroom, splashed her with water, and forced her to vomit the pills. Slowly, Maureen regained consciousness.
For Norman, it was a bizarre inversion of his own history. He had once ended a woman's life in this bathroom. Mm-hmm. If I'm correct, I might be 100% right in that, but I believe in that bathroom, and now he's here saving one. Another MC.
Absolutely.
And
if it wasn't the same room, it's still the same hotel, like.
Do you want to know what's fucked up?
What?
Have you seen pictures of Maureen Coyle?
Was she very like her?
Short, blonde hair.
Well, he had a type. Over the following days, Norman became strangely protective of Maureen. He brought her meals, listened to her troubles, and treated her with a gentle kindness that was foreign to most of his relationships. Maureen, for her part, was drawn to Norman's awkward vulnerability. She saw not a killer, but a damaged man like herself, someone who understood pain and loneliness.
And here's where it gets twisted, because Maureen didn't know the whole story. She saw a shy innkeeper, not the guy with a body count and a mummified mom in the basement. She just saw someone who, kindred spirit.
Exactly. And their bond deepened quickly. Some described it as a romance, and others saw it as two broken souls clinging to each other. Either way, it was the first time in decades that Norman had experienced genuine human connection.
But not all visitors at the motel brought tenderness.
Mm-hmm. Another arrival was Dwayne Duke, a seedy drifter with a cocky grain and a taste for trouble. Norman, desperate for help running the property, hired Duke as a handyman. Then almost immediately, Duke turned the motel into his playground. He threw parties in the rooms, invited women, and taunted Norman with crude jokes.
So Norman got one guest trying to kill herself,
Mhm.
and another treating the place like a frat house. Not exactly the quiet business he was hoping.
No.
I mean, this is like the exact same shit he had disposed of Toomey for, or someone had disposed of Toomey for. That was never proven who did that.
Exactly.
But he fired Toomey anyway for the same fucking shit.
Yeah. And things grew worse when Duke introduced Norman to Red and Patsy Boyle, a couple of out-of-town revelers. They partied loudly, mocking Norman's stiff demeanour and hinting at his reputation. One night, Norman snapped. Mother returned, knife in hand, and when the party was over, Red and Patsy were dead.
Their bodies were dragged to the swamp, joining the long list of secrets buried beneath its murky surface.
Duke, however, was no fool. He noticed the disappearances, put two and two together and realised Norman was back to his old ways. It's your fucking fault, Duke. Instead of fleeing, he decided to use it to his advantage. Duke confronted Norman, demanding money in exchange for silence.
Yeah, he sneered, pay up or I go to the cops. And you know they'd love to dig up that swamp. I mean, blackmailing Norman Bates. Blackmailing any serial killer is the dumbest
idea.
shit.
What do you think is going to happen?
It's like poking a rattlesnake with a stick and saying, you know, don't bite me. It's that story. What's that story of that? Is it the scorpion and the
It's an old fable. I think I know.
where
I
it's trying
can't
to get
think.
across the water. It's like, you won't sting me if I bring you across the water. No, and then he stings him. It's like, well, what do you
What do you
expect from a
expect?
fucking
I'm a
scorpion?
scorpion.
Exactly. It's stupid, you know.
Yeah.
It's like being a fucking college girl and getting into Ed Kemper's car and hoping the fuck your head's still going to be attached an hour later.
Yep.
Not going to happen.
Norman did refuse. And in the fight that followed, the two men ended up near the swamp itself.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got distracted there by thinking of Ed Kemper again.
Huh.
That dude creeps me out. He's another serial killer. It's not that I have sympathy for him like I do for Ed Gein. But he's another guy who understood he was better off in prison and locked away from society. But
Other people were better off.
But his story fascinates me.
Yeah.
And I don't hate him as much as I hate other serial killers.
Yeah.
And he's got a very, very soothing voice.
He does.
There's not whatever it is about Ed serial killers, just chill. I don't know. Duke swung for Norman. Norman ducked, and in the chaos, Norman pushed him into the water. Duke's body slipped beneath the surface, swallowed whole by the very place he threatened to expose. So obviously, no, it was a fight here. This would have been a manslaughter case more than anything. Duke drowned trying to get out of that swamp.
Yeah.
I assume, I've never been to a swamp, but I assume they're difficult to
Marshy.
make your way through once you're in there. I'd assume it's sinking fast.
Like a wetter bog, I'd
There's
say.
a reason he was throwing cars and bodies in there.
Yes. Through it all, Maureen Coyle remained devoted to Norman. She saw his anguish and his struggles and believed he was a man trying to resist his demons. In one chilling scene, Norman stood trembling with a knife in his hand, Mother's voice urging him to kill Maureen. But when he looked at her, he faltered and he dropped the weapon, whispering, "No, I won't hurt you." For a moment, it seemed like Norman might truly overcome the monster within.
But the thing about Norman Bates is, even when he tries to fight Mother, fate doesn't cut him any slack. He just isn't getting a fucking break no matter where he goes.
Yep. And tragedy struck in the cruelest way. One night as Maureen fled the house in terror after another of Norman's outbursts, she tripped on the staircase. Falling backwards, she struck her head fatally. Norman found her body at the bottom of the stairs and he dropped to his knees, weeping and clutching her like a child clutching a broken doll. For Norman, Maureen represented his one chance at redemption. And with her death, even though it wasn't by his hand, that chance was gone forever.
It was almost like the universe itself saying, nope, Norman, you don't get a happy fucking ending.
Yep.
And just again, for a bit of context here, if you want to see what the steps we're talking about here, this wasn't the stairs in the house. The Bates Motel is down by the road. You can check this out on our Instagram page. There's pictures, family pictures of Norman and his mom and stuff like that before the house. But the house itself, the old Gothic house, sat in a hill by the motel, and there was a concrete staircase leading up to the house. So I mean, and it was a good distance as well. Like, so falling down that fucking stairs was a definite death sentence. Like, you know,
Absolutely.
There was no way of surviving that. But
Yeah.
Norman here, he's just like we said, he can't catch a break. There is no happy ending for this poor guy. It's just every time he tries to better himself, something or someone comes along and he shits the bed again. He's back to being Mother. You know.
And from that moment on, Norman's fragile grip on hope shattered completely. The motel once again became a place of death. The swamp filled with fresh secrets, and Norman Bates, torn between grief, rage, and the ever-present whisper of mother, slipped back into the shadows of his own mind. But there was still one person who refused to let the truth stay buried. Tracy Venable, a tenacious reporter, determined to uncover Norman's past and expose what was really happening at the Bates Motel.
I think we might have mentioned her once or twice in other episodes, just more quotes from stuff she had written. And that's when things get even darker, because if there's one thing Norman Bates doesn't handle well, is people digging into the family fucking history. Yes. You know? Emma Spool proved that one.
And by now, the Bates Motel had chewed up and spat out another round of victims. Maureen Coyle was dead, Dwayne Duke and the Boyles had vanished into the swamp, and Norman Bates was once again teetering between reality and delusion.
Well, Fairvale wasn't the kind of place where you could bury bodies forever, not with reporters sniffing around anyway, you know?
So in enters Tracy Venable, a sharp, relentless journalist who smelt blood in the Bates saga.
And honestly, she probably smelled the swamp too. But by this point, the bog behind the motel was less natural landmark and more lost and found murder weapons and bodies.
Tracy wasn't content with the official line, and too many people had gone missing and too many explanations didn't add up. She began digging through the old Bates family history, interviewing townsfolk, chasing courthouse records, and connecting dots that the authorities had long ignored.
And what she uncovered shook the fragile narrative Norman had built around himself, do you know?
For years, Norman had believed that Emma Spool was his real mother, and it was the only explanation that made sense to him. Why she had appeared after his release, why she had claimed to love him unconditionally, and why she had insisted Norma was just his aunt. But Tracy's research told a different story. Emma Spool, she discovered, had indeed been committed years ago, but not because she was Norman's mother. She was his aunt, Norma Bates' sister. And the murder she had been locked away for, it was the killing of her own lover, not Norman's father, as she had claimed.
Huh? So Norman's dad did die from the bees?
Yeah.
I'm confused. I got to look a bit more into that one. Anyway, so Spool wasn't his mom. That's the main thing here.
Yeah, exactly.
Norman's dad doesn't play a big part in any of this. So let's just. Whew. So Spool wasn't mom. She was just another twisted branch on the Bates family tree. Basically, Norman had been catfished before the internet even existed.
Exactly. And armed with this information, Tracy confronted Norman, and she told him point blank, Emma Spool had lied. Norma Bates was his real mother all along.
I feel bad for Norman's dad now. No, I'm like, he never did anything wrong at all, the poor man. He didn't even cheat.
No.
Norman's reaction was catastrophic, obviously. Like my reaction, I'm fucking struck. I'm going to go put on a dress and a wig. I'll talk to y'all next week. He trembled, stammered, and then the shrill voice of mother burst forth. She's lying to you, Norman. Don't listen to her. I am your only truth. And boom, just like that, mother is back in the driver's seat.
Yes. And the confrontation escalated. Tracy searched the house and discovered Spool's corpse, carefully preserved, hidden away like Norma's before her.
Yeah, she turned back to Norman, but the man standing there wasn't Norman anymore. He was back to being mother. Norma mother, not Emma mother. Norma, the real danger.
Knife in hand, Norman advanced, and Tracy stumbled back, narrowly escaping his strike.
She tried to reason with him, shouting, she wasn't your mother, Norman. Norma was. But at this point, he thinks he's fucking Norma. So, I mean, that's just the stupidest thing. It wasn't going to help. But mother's only screaming louder and louder and louder in Norman's head at this point.
Yeah. And in that moment, Tracy saw not a murderer, but a man entirely consumed. Norman Bates was gone. There was only the ghost of his mother wearing his face.
You think if he was that confused as well, did he at that point have two moms in his head fighting out? Was Emma and Norma both screaming in his head at that point, I'm your mother, I'm your mother, listen to me. And then as the both of them turn to each other and agree, kill the bitch,
Possibly.
You know? So at this point, Tracy's probably realised she wasn't doing investigative journalism anymore. She was doing last fucking rights, you know? This is big trouble.
Yeah. And Tracy barely escaped the house alive. Authorities soon swarmed the property, and once again, Norman Bates was taken into custody. Doctors who evaluated him this time found his psyche more fractured than ever.
Because there's two moms in there now instead of one.
Yep. And the brief glimpses of recovery he had shown after his first institutionalization were gone.
One report read, patient exhibits complete dominance of the maternal personality. Norman Bates appears to no longer exist as an independent identity. The subject refers to himself exclusively as Norma and insists he has no son. So basically, Norman has officially gone full method actor, permanently cast as his mother. But we've seen this once already before, because they said the exact same thing about him when he first went in 1960.
Exactly. Norman was recommitted to the state hospital, locked away once more, but for many, the damage was already irreparable. The Bates Motel had claimed too many lives, and the Bates name was etched forever into the annals of American true crime.
And yet, even in the hospital, there were whispers of change.
Some doctors noted that with time and treatment, Norman occasionally surfaced. His voice softened, and he spoke as himself briefly before Mother snapped back into control. It was enough to keep hope alive, enough for some to wonder if Norman Bates might one day be released again.
Don't they say the fucking definition of insanity is repeating the same fucking stupid mistake over and over again?
Yeah.
If you're living anywhere near Fairvale, this was basically the worst bedtime story you could hear. Sleep tight, kids. Norman might be back soon. The Bates case seemed destined to be a cycle, of release, relapse, recommit. And through it all, the shadow of Mother just lingered over every move Norman ever made.
And by the late 1980s, with Norman once again behind the hospital walls, the Bates Motel fell silent. The sign rusted, the house decayed, and for a moment, Fairvale breathed easier. But the history had shown that Norman Bates' story was never truly over. And against all odds, he would walk free again.
Because if horror has a sequel, so does Norman fucking Bates. Norman is he's like a fucking horror movie killer.
Yep.
Every time you think he's down and out, he'll come back for one more movie. Every time they say this is the last chapter, the next one's just going to be the new beginning.
Yeah.
It never ends.
By the early 1990s, most people believed the Bates story was finally over. Norman was back in the hospital, Mother had taken over completely, and the motel had slipped into ruin. Fairvale had moved on, or at least tried to. But Norman Bates had one last chapter left to write.
Like I said, last chapters are always followed by new beginnings. But anyway, of course he did. Norman Bates is like a bad penny of American crime. He always turns up again. It's not going to stop. Over and over again.
After years of treatment, doctors once again declared Norman fit for release.
It seemed impossible, but in 1992, this guy is walking out of a mental institution for a second time after 2 separate killing fucking sprees,
And this time, Norman seemed genuinely calmer. He had aged into his 60s, his once boyish stammer replaced with a quiet solemnity. And for the first time in decades, there were whispers that maybe, just maybe, Norman Bates could live a normal life.
And if you believe that, I've got some prime real estate near a swamp to sell you.
But Norman surprised people. He found work and he kept a low profile and eventually met a woman named Connie, a kind-hearted nurse from the institution he had called home for many years, who saw him not as a murderer, but a man struggling to leave his past behind. And the two fell in love. And against all odds, Norman Bates got married.
Okay, I just have to pause here. Imagine being Connie's friends at the wedding. So, who's the groom? Norman Bates. Okay, so that's going to be an awkward toast.
Yeah.
Where's the mother of the groom? She's the one with the flies flying around her head over there. Yeah, empty eye sockets, real shrivel up skin. That's all right.
But for Norman, Connie represented redemption.
Oh, or better again, Norman at the fucking head table, jumping from his chair to the next chair over to be the mother of the groom. Just doing quick changes in costume. It would be brilliant.
Connie treated Norman with respect, gave him a sense of stability, and even entertained the idea of starting a family.
And that's when Norman's demons would come rushing back. Because, I mean, as we fucking know, the Bateses aren't very well known for mental health.
Exactly. The prospect of fatherhood sent Norman into a spiral. On the surface, he was thrilled, but deep down, he was terrified. What if his child inherited his madness? What if Mother poisoned another generation? The old voice returned, whispering doubts and commands. Norman grew paranoid, convinced that bringing a child into the world would unleash his curse upon the innocent.
So in true Norman fashion, instead of baby-proofing the house, he just, starts panic-proofing his brain as best he can.
Yes. And his crisis reached a peak when Connie became pregnant. At first, Norman tried to hide his terror, but as the weeks passed, Mother pushed harder. The voice told him he had to stop the child from being born, that it was the only way to protect it. And one night, Norman approached Connie with a knife. He raised it, trembling, his face contorted with anguish. But at the last moment, he stopped. The knife clattered to the floor. Norman wept, confessing his fears to Connie. He begged her to leave him, to run while she still could. And Connie refused. She told him she believed in him and that he was stronger than Mother. And for once, Norman chose to believe her.
So for the first time in his life, he disobeys Mother. And that's kind of huge.
It was.
So this is the real true breakthrough.
Yeah.
The boy that could never say no to Mom had finally said, yo, Mom, fuck you.
Exactly. But Norman knew he could never be free while the house still stood. He returned to the old Bates house one last time. The rooms were filled with ghosts. His mother's untouched bedroom, the basement where bodies had been hidden, the attic where shadows lingered. Every wall whispered his crimes back to him. Norman doused the house in gasoline and he struck a match. As the flames rose, he stood watching the silhouette of the Gothic structure collapsing into ash. The house that birthed Mother, the house that had held every secret, was gone.
It's almost poetic. Burn the house, burn the past, except Norman Bates doesn't get poetry. He gets tragedy.
Absolutely. And after the fire, Norman seemed lighter. He told Connie that he finally felt free. For the first time in decades, he spoke of a future without fear. But his freedom was short-lived. In 1994, just 2 years after burning the house, Norman Bates died of pneumonia. He passed quietly in a hospital bed, far removed from the Gothic voice, or Gothic house even, on the hill, and far from the swamp, the knives, and the voices.
So after all that, the murders, the disguises, the voices, Norman Bates is taken out by pneumonia. It's almost insultingly ordinary.
Absolutely it is. But maybe that was the final mercy. The Bates Motel never reopened after the fire, and the land was eventually sold, the swamp drained, the ruins cleared, but the legend of Norman Bates lingers. For some, he remains a monster, the polite innkeeper who slaughtered guests and preserved his mother like a trophy, and for others, he is a tragic figure, a boy broken by abuse, consumed by grief, who never escaped the voice of a domineering parent.
Either way, you don't hear Bates Motel and think of clean sheets and a continental breakfast.
No. So Norman Bates' story ends not with a knife, but with a whisper. Not in a swamp, but in a hospital bed. A man who lived most of his life as a prisoner of his own mind and who only found peace in death.
And yet his name will never die because the Bates Motel may be gone, but the shadow of Mother will always be with us.
Yep. And that is the legacy of Norman Bates, America's most infamous son, whose crimes turned a lonely roadside motel into a legend of fear.
Awesome. Now, I know I said, fuck it, we're gonna be leaving the Bates today, and that sucks, and I'm gonna miss them. But if you tune in on Friday for our Horrorverse headlines, Halloween special, it'll be a Halloween day when our Horrorverse headlines comes out.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about the TV show inspired by the Bates story, Bates Motel. Came out there in only finished up a couple of years ago.
That's all.
Really good TV show. It's a loose adaptation of what Norman's life was actually like. Kind of similar to those monster things that they do with Ed Gein and Jeffrey Dahmer and all that stuff on TV. But it's a good show, so you can check us out in Horrorverse Headlines this Friday when we talk about Bates Motel, the TV show, based on... There's also a movie called Bates Motel.
Oh.
Loosely based on the story. It's slightly different. In that movie, they play up... it's more living off of... it's more of a... The house is haunted than Norman was haunted.
I get you.
What happens apparently in that movie, I haven't seen the movie, but Norman remains in a mental institution, dies in the mental institution, but he has a friend in the mental institution, and he wills the house and the motel to this guy.
Okay.
And when he gets out of the mental institution, he moves into the house and reopens the motel, but the ghosts of
are still
the house start to fuck with his head. I love the way they do this for everything. Every serial killer, they it's like serial killers or killer stories don't have enough craziness built into them already. Filmmakers decide, you know what? Let's take this crazy story and twist it and make it crazier.
Yep.
Because that's what we need. Like we need to put more fucking craziness into this fucking absolutely, wild fucking story already.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Right away, we'll be talking about some of that shit in the Horrorverse headlines this Friday. Check it out.
Yeah. And if you want more horror and crime fun, then head on over to patreon.com/the Horrorverse Network and check out our bonus show. It's a live action, because tomorrow we'll be dropping our bonus show episode where we will again be talking about, as we said, a man very similar to Norman Bates, and that is the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein, as well as us covering his life in part 2 of
wait, this is my fault. I forgot to change the outro.
That's
script.
why I was stumbling.
Yeah. We already did this last week.
We did.
This week we talk about Ed. Just like I was talking about Norman's influence on movies and television, we're going to take the guy who's almost identical to Norman, in a bit more extreme than Norman, and that's Ed Gein. And we've been talking about him for the last 2 weeks on Into Live Action. This week we talk about his influence on TV and movie, which has been really, really huge. So we're going to talk about him on one more time on It's a Live Action, but more about his influence on pop culture.
Yep.
And while you're there, you can check out the rest of our Patreon exclusive shows, like Amy's horrific history show, Playing with Bones, where we covered a lot this season. We're coming to an end. You finished yesterday was the last episode.
Yes, yeah. So this week we covered Dark Relics.
Yeah, and that was fun.
Curiosities. Yeah,
that was fun. We talk about serial killers' heads in jars. We talk about fucking how to keep witches away from your houses. Apparently bricking shoes into the walls works. I don't know.
Sure,
but you can check that out. And then next week, I'll be back with Celebrity Rap Sheet for 4 weeks. And it'll be 4 weeks of O.J. Simpson. We're going to go through I'm using the 30 for 30 documentary, Made in America, the O.J. Simpson story, as my main source for that. And that is like an 8-hour long documentary. It used to be in fucking episodes, and then they just fucking stuck it all together. So I went through all that and broke it into 4 parts, and we're going to go through OJ's entire life and history and abuse that he caused, not just to Nicole Brown Simpson, but to his previous wife and to other women, and his possessiveness and all that shit. All the scandals go with OJ. It's going to be a fun season. I'm looking forward to jumping into it. I always like talking about the OJ Simpson story, because especially the fucking wild theories behind everything is fun to get into.
All that and mini monsters are available now at the Horrorverse Network and Patreon. Subscribe now for only $5 a month with a 7-day free trial for all new subscribers. And if you're into gaming, you can catch me on Twitch every Monday from 10 p.m. to midnight Irish time, which is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's on Twitch at AmyRose9.
And we'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. See you then. Same live time, same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.